The moment my mother blocked my grandmother's number, something inside me broke, and I knew there was no way back. I watched her thumb move across the phone screen with calm, surgical precision. Not a pause. Not a sigh.
Just a swipe and a tap.
Silence. She set the phone down beside her crystal wine glass and smoothed the front of her ivory blouse as if she'd just brushed away lint. She's becoming a problem, my mother said lightly. 92 years old, and suddenly everything is an emergency. These calls are just cries for attention. Across the table, my aunt leaned in, her lips stained with red wine and cruelty. Honestly, she said, almost bored, she's lived long enough. We should stop pretending her heart is still in the game. That was the exact second I realized I wasn't just the disappointment of the family. I was the only one who still felt anything at all. To understand why my family could dismiss a dying woman with such ease, you have to understand who they were. The Hawthorne family, polished, wealthy, admired. We looked perfect from the outside. Inside, we were hollow. My father measured people like numbers on a spreadsheet, useful or expendable. My mother treated them like accessories, either fashionable or embarrassing. And me? I was the embarrassment. I didn't go to law school. I didn't marry money. I worked at a small public library and lived alone in a studio apartment where the heater screamed all night like it was begging for mercy. My parents called my life a phase. Their tone suggested a disease. The only person who never did was my grandmother, Evelyn. She lived nearly 400 miles away in a gray, wind-beaten coastal town called Greyhaven. While my parents sent passive-aggressive emails about my potential, Grandma Evelyn mailed me pressed flowers, handwritten notes, and old photos with stories scribbled on the back.
She saw me.
Really saw me. So when my phone vibrated in my pocket 5 minutes after my mother blocked her number, I already knew. I stepped into the hallway and answered. "Lena," she whispered. Her voice sounded thin, frayed at the edges. "I can't find my heart pills. The blue ones. I'm scared, sweetheart." My chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. Behind me, laughter drifted from the dining room. My family was arguing about wine pairings while a woman who had loved them her entire lives struggled for air. I went back inside, picked up my coat, and said nothing. "Where are you going?" my father snapped. "To Greyhaven." My aunt laughed. "With what money? You barely had enough last month to cover rent." "I'll figure it out." She tilted her head. "You'll spend everything you have just to sit with an old woman who won't remember your name by morning. Be sensible." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something cold settle in my bones. "I'd rather be broke and human than rich and empty," I said. I didn't wait for their response. I walked out of the house I'd grown up in. The marble floors, the art, the silence. I had $500, half a tank of gas, and a road that stretched into darkness. The drive felt endless. Rain hammered my windshield. The highway twisted through mountains swallowed by fog. I stopped once for gas, watching $80 vanish from my account like it was nothing. My hands shook as I drank bitter coffee and prayed to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore.
"Please.
Just keep her alive until I get there." When I finally saw the sign for Greyhaven, dawn was breaking over the ocean, pale and exhausted, just like me. I pulled into my grandmother's gravel driveway, my heart pounding, already bracing myself for what I might find behind that door. I had no idea that what waited for me inside would change everything. I burst through the front door with my heart in my throat, already rehearsing the scream I thought I'd have to let out. "Grandma?" The house was warm.
Not just heated, alive.
Fire crackled in the stone fireplace. The air smelled of cinnamon and fresh tea. Morning light spilled across the hardwood floors like nothing was wrong, like no one had called me in terror 6 hours earlier. And then I saw her. Evelyn sat in her favorite armchair by the window, wrapped in a soft gray shawl, watching the waves slam against the cliffs. Her posture was straight, her hair neatly brushed. She looked peaceful. Too peaceful. "Grandma?" My voice cracked as I stepped forward. I drove all night. You said you couldn't find your pills. Your heart." She turned slowly and smiled at me. Not a fragile smile. A tired one. The kind you wear after finishing something difficult. Sit down, Lena, she said gently. I didn't. My legs refused to move. My brain was scrambling to catch up. You look like you've seen a ghost, she added. I thought I was about to, I whispered. I thought I was too late. She studied me for a long moment, eyes sharp despite her age. Then she reached for the small table beside her and picked up a familiar blue bottle. My pills were never missing. The words hit me harder than the drive. What? I stared at the bottle. But you said, your call. You were scared. I was scared, she said calmly. Just not of dying. My stomach dropped. Then why did you make me think? Because I needed to know, she interrupted softly. She pressed a button on a small remote resting in her palm. A speaker clicked on. And suddenly, my mother's voice filled the room. She's becoming a nuisance. My father's voice followed.
Cold. Detached.
The timing isn't bad, actually. Property values are peaking. Then my aunt, laughing. She's lived long enough. I felt like I'd been punched. I called them first, Grandma Evelyn said, her voice steady as stone. Told each of them I was having a heart attack. My chest burned. Your mother told me to call emergency services and hung up. Your father didn't answer. Your aunt told me to stop being dramatic. She looked at me. Then I called you. My knees finally gave out, and I collapsed onto the sofa. You terrified me, I said hoarsely. I spent everything I had. I thought I was losing you. She leaned forward and took my hands in hers. They were warm, strong. You came, she said simply. That's all I needed to know. I shook my head. I don't understand. A legacy, she said quietly, is a dangerous thing to leave to monsters. She reached under her shawl and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Not a prescription. Something else. A lottery ticket. I've played the same numbers for 40 years, she said. Birthdays. Anniversaries.
Love.
Loss. My heart began to race again, but for a very different reason. I won. The word hung in the air. Before I could speak, the front doorbell rang, sharp, impatient, entitled. Grandma Evelyn smiled. The vultures, she murmured. Right on time. Footsteps echoed in the hall, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that my family had arrived, thinking they were here to claim a death. They had no idea what was waiting for them. They entered like they owned the place. My parents first, dressed in solemn black cashmere that looked freshly pressed, grief worn like a costume. My aunt followed, heels clicking sharply against the floor, eyes already scanning the room as if measuring it for resale. Mother, my mom cried, hand flying to her chest. We rushed here the moment we heard. My father nodded gravely. Terrifying ordeal. Cell service was impossible. I stayed seated.
Silent.
Watching. Aunt Claire stopped short when she saw me. Her mouth twisted.
Oh.
You're still here. Yes, I said. I am. Grandma Evelyn didn't stand. She didn't rush. She didn't thank them. She sat like a queen who had waited patiently for an audience she no longer needed. I'm perfectly fine, she said. Better than ever, actually. Disappointment flickered across my mother's face before she masked it.
Oh, well.
Thank God, she said, though her eyes had already drifted toward the antique cabinets. Since we're all here, we should talk about arrangements. This house is far too much for you now. No, Grandma said. The word cracked through the room. She reached under her shawl and placed 2 items on the table between us, a legal folder and the lottery ticket. I've spent the morning with my lawyers, she continued calmly. A trust has been established. My aunt leaned forward, eyes gleaming. A trust? Yes, Grandma said. A blind one. The air shifted. Everything I own, she went on, including this house and the $333 million I won, is now controlled by a single trustee. Silence swallowed the room. My father's face drained of color. My mother's lips parted, soundless. And that trustee, Grandma finished, is Lena. I felt the room tilt. There's also a clause, she added, her voice sharpening. As of today, Julian, Margaret, and Claire, you are barred from this property. Any attempt to contact me for money will trigger a full investigation into the funds you've been quietly siphoning from my accounts for the last 5 years. My father staggered back, as if struck. You wouldn't, my mother whispered. We're family. Family doesn't ignore you when you're dying, I said, standing. My voice didn't shake. Family doesn't block your number. They tried then, crying, pleading, even rage. My aunt screamed. My mother clutched at my arm. But none of it worked. I walked them to the door. As they stood on the gravel driveway, stripped of everything they thought was already theirs, I felt something I never felt before.
Peace.
I shut the door and locked it. Behind me, Grandma Evelyn poured tea. Outside, the ocean roared. Inside, everything had changed, but not yet finished. The house exhaled once the door was locked. It was the kind of silence that comes after a storm has finished destroying everything it needed to. Grandma Evelyn poured the tea slowly, her hand steady, as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of our family history. We sat by the window without speaking for a long time. The ocean slammed itself against the cliffs below, relentless and honest. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup and finally let myself feel how tired I was. Not just from the drive, but from a lifetime of trying to be enough for people who measured love in profit margins. You did beautifully, Grandma said at last. I swallowed. I didn't do anything. I just showed up. She smiled. Most people never do. I looked around the room. The furniture, the photos, the quiet dignity of the house. $300 million, I murmured. It doesn't feel real.
It isn't, she said. Not yet.
Money is just potential. It becomes real when you decide what kind of person you'll be with it. I thought of my apartment with the rattling heater. The kids who came into the library just to be warm. The old man who read newspapers cover to cover because it gave his days shape. There are libraries, I said slowly, that can't afford heat in the winter. Grandma's eyes softened. Then we'll start there. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I didn't do this for revenge, she said quietly. I did it for clarity. I needed to know that when I'm gone, the light won't go out. Emotion rose in my throat, sharp and sudden. I was so scared I'd lose you. You will, she said gently. One day.
But not like they thought.
And not without knowing you changed something. Later, after she went to rest, I stood alone in the parlor. The same room where my family had planned her future, like an inconvenience. The same room where they lost everything they believed they deserved. I didn't feel triumph. I felt free. In the weeks that followed, the headlines came. Anonymous donations. New wings on hospitals. Libraries renovated. Heating systems replaced. Scholarships created quietly, without names carved in stone. And every time my parents saw one of those stories, I knew they understood. It was me, the daughter they dismissed, the granddaughter they ignored, the woman they thought would fail. They never called again. They couldn't. On my last night in Greyhaven before heading home, Grandma and I sat watching the sun sink into the ocean. So, she said, smiling over her tea, what's the first thing you'll do? I smiled back, finally unburdened. Sleep for a week. She laughed. Good. Saving the world can wait until you're rested. As the waves crashed below us, I realized the truth. The real inheritance wasn't the money. It was the certainty that kindness, once chosen, can echo louder than cruelty ever will. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly who I was, and that was more than enough.